Still sending emails that get ignored or worse, marked as spam? In this Counsel Cast Chambers episode, we're revisiting the sharpest takeaways from our conversation with copywriter and marketing strategist Tanya Brody, where we expose the most common email marketing mistakes that law firms make and how to fix them. From weak subject lines and inconsistent messaging to calls to action that fall flat, Tanya shares exactly why your emails aren't converting and what to do instead to stand out in your clients' inboxes. If you're relying on email to build trust and drive leads, and you should be, this episode is your blueprint for doing it right. Let's dive into the highlights. This is Counsel Cast Chambers, the best of Counsel Cast reexamined. The title for the show is What's Wrong with Your Emails? Common Legal Marketing Blunders Exposed. So you've got a history of writing for lawyers and knowing, first of all, what is wrong with just their approach and the writing in general. Can you talk about just how the approach is typically done wrong when lawyers especially are considering it from their own perspective?
Okay, so there were three things. So for the record, I used to write for a lawyer marketing service. Just so we're totally transparent.
Yes. Yeah.
Lawyers like
one of the big ones.
Yeah, one of the big ones.
Yeah.
And the three things that I found were the biggest problem were lawyers thought absolutely everybody under the sun was their audience, which is not true.
Yes.
Because, if you're a personal injury lawyer, the people who are getting divorced are not your audience.
Yeah.
And the person who's walking down the street and is fine is not your audience. The person who slipped and fell on that crack, that's your audience.
Right.
So that was a big one, that they came at everything with wanting to share their credentials and say how wonderful they were.
Yes.
And that's not actually what anyone reading a website or listening to them cares about. They want to know that you can solve their problem.
Right.
That is a standard marketing thing, is the question you are answering for every single person you talk to is, what's in it for me?
Yes. Even if you're selling a bag of chips, it's still the same question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I open that bag of chips, what is in there for me?
Right.
As if I call you to ask you to help me with this legal problem, whatever it is, whether it's intellectual property or divorce.
Right.
What are you doing for me? I don't care about you.
I don't care where you went to law school. Yes.
Yeah. So, and the third problem that I always found was that lawyers need to sound sophisticated.
Oh, gosh.
So true. I cannot tell you how many times I had lawyers say, this doesn't sound professional or sophisticated enough. And I'm like, I understand that, but this is what the people reading your website they're going to understand. I had one lawyer, bless him. He was a criminal lawyer who served primarily gang members, who I wrote out his website copy, figuring he was going to be like every other lawyer.
Yeah.
Wanting to sound professional, wanting to sound sophisticated. And he came back to me and said, I really appreciate what you wrote, but I don't think any of my clients would understand a word of this.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
That's
you.
it. That's it.
Oh
that was my next question is what is the problem with sounding so, highfalutin and fancy and whatever. But that's the answer already. You already answered that. It's your clients don't get it.
Yeah.
So what happens when you use all the legalese and all the fancy lawyer talk and your potential client is a gang member, or even they're just low income, or your potential client has just never done this thing before? What happens then when they come to your site and it's all the fancy talk?
They shut down.
Yeah.
They're like, this makes no sense to me. And they go to the next person who has explained it in plain English.
Right.
Because that's what they're looking for. They're looking, okay, I've got a DUI. I'm going to lose my license, which means I can't get to work. That's what they want to deal with. They don't want to deal with the DUI. They want to deal with the fact that if they lose their license, they won't be able to get to work. They won't be able to take care of their family or pay their bills or whatever it is.
Yes.
Okay. So you're not getting to the root of their problem. You're getting to the root of your problem, which is these are all the things that you're going to have to go through to get them out of the DUI. They don't care.
No, they just want that end result.
Right.
And so it's not like, let me tell you all the forms I'm going to have to fill out and all the work that I'm going to have to do. What they care about is, how am I going to get to work?
Yeah. How am I going to keep my license?
I feel like that's such a major misstep that so much content is making. And we're here today to talk about all the problems, but we're going to focus more on emails. So let's kind of translate or transfer that over to, okay, so we're not talking about you. We're not talking about where you went to law school. We're talking about the client and what their problems are and how you can solve them. But how does that translate into emails and email systems?
So this is something I wish that more lawyers would use.
Yeah.
Because you may get that phone call from someone and they may be shopping around.
Of course they are. If they're smart.
That's normal.
Right.
We all do it.
Yeah.
We all look at, Best Buy and Walmart or whatever for whatever product is going to be best for that refrigerator. Because,
right.
Let's face it, lawyers are expensive.
Yeah.
You guys are a high ticket item.
Well, and you should be. I mean, wouldn't you question someone who is going to be spending this much money that isn't doing the research? I mean, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think the next issue is that it's something that lawyers don't think about because they're always for that, let's get the new stuff, let's get the fresh stuff. But you don't think about the fact that there's someone who may have had an issue and then that issue went away, but maybe it came up again.
Yeah.
So if you have someone's email address, you are not paying over and over again to attract their attention. You have it.
Yes.
You have permission to enter their inbox. You can go in there, and until they click that unsubscribe button, you can send them information. You can say, hey, don't forget, I'm over here. You remember that funny little niggling legal problem you had? You remember that your ex who isn't paying child support? You remember that insurance company that isn't playing fair?
Yes.
I'm right here. And it's that friendly reminder of, oh yeah, I have that problem. And when they open that email, then you can say, okay, so here's your situation. Here's how we can solve that problem.
Oh, that's so good.
So I think that's the big difference that email gives lawyers that, just that phone call doesn't.
Right.
Because those people, if they call you once and you say, I can't take your case, or like, well, I think I can help you, but they're like, oh, but you're really expensive. They're not coming back.
No. And they're not going to even open your emails either.